The first time he handed me the envelope, I hesitated. My fingers brushed against his, and I couldn't ignore how dry and fragile his skin felt, like paper worn thin over time. The weight of the money inside was undeniable, but it wasn't the bills that made my chest tighten. It was the weight of what it represented. "Take it," he said softly, his voice carrying the faint rasp of age. "You've earned it." Earned it. The words rang in my ears, both a validation and a curse. I slid the envelope into my bag, avoiding his gaze. I told myself this was just another arrangement, a transaction like so many others. But deep down, I knew it was more complicated than that. When I first met Victor, I didn't see him as anything more than an opportunity. He was in his late 70s, wealthy and, as far as I could tell, lonely. He'd approached me at a charity gala, his eyes sparkling with a mix of curiosity and something darker, something I couldn't quite place. "You have a beautiful smile," he said, offering me a drink. I'd heard it all before, but there was something disarming about his honesty. He wasn't trying to impress me. He didn't need to. We started meeting regularly, dinners at upscale restaurants, walks in the park where he'd talk about his late wife, his years building a business empire, his regrets. At first, it felt like I was doing him a favor, offering companionship in exchange for his generosity. But as the weeks went on, I found myself drawn to him in ways I couldn't explain. His confidence, his wit, the way he made me feel seen in a world that often looked right past me. One evening, over a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my rent, he leaned across the table and asked, "What do you want out of life?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before, not like that. "I don't know," I admitted. "Security, I guess. Stability." He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. "And what are you willing to do to get it?" Looking back, I realized that was the moment everything changed. Up until then, I'd told myself this was harmless, a mutually beneficial arrangement. But his question forced me to confront the truth. I was willing to cross lines I hadn't even known existed. The first time I slept with him, I cried in the shower afterward. Not because I felt used, quite the opposite. Victor treated me with more care and tenderness than anyone ever had, but that made it worse somehow. It would have been easier if he'd been cold or cruel. Instead, he made me feel special, cherished, and that terrified me. "You're overthinking it," he said one morning as we lay in bed, the early sunlight casting soft shadows across his face. "Life is complicated. Relationships are complicated. There's no shame in finding happiness wherever you can." Happiness? Was that what this was? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I felt trapped, caught between the person I was and the person I was becoming. My friends noticed the change in me. "You're different," one of them said over coffee. "More confident, but guarded." I laughed it off, but her words stayed with me. She wasn't wrong. Victor had given me confidence, yes, but he'd also made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. As the months went on, our relationship grew deeper. He started sharing more about his past, his fears, his dreams, and I started sharing mine. For the first time in my life, I felt truly understood. But with that understanding came a new kind of vulnerability, one I wasn't prepared for. One night, as we lay in bed, he turned to me and said, "I don't want to lose you." "You won't," I assured him, even as a knot formed in my stomach. Because I knew, deep down, that this couldn't last. He was a senior citizen, a man with a lifetime of experiences behind him. And I was just starting mine. The breaking point came when he asked me to move in with him. "You don't have to decide right away," he said, his tone gentle. "Just think about it." I did think about it. For days I weighed the pros and cons, trying to imagine what my life would look like if I said yes. On the surface, it seemed like an easy decision. Stability, security, a life of comfort. But beneath that surface was a swirling storm of doubt and fear. Would I lose myself entirely? Would I wake up one day and realize I'd made a mistake I couldn't undo? In the end, I said no. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it was also the most important. Victor took the news better than I expected. I understand, he said, his voice heavy with sadness. But I'll always be here for you, no matter what. We parted ways not long after that. I'd like to say I walked away without looking back, but that would be a lie. I think about him often, about the lessons he taught me and the parts of myself he helped me discover. And while our relationship may have been unconventional, I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because sometimes the most complicated relationships are the ones that teach us the most about who we are and what we want out of life.